When I bought a decaying abandoned house for $100, everyone in Pinewood Estates thought I'd lost my mind. They said it was haunted, that lights flickered at midnight and whispers came from the attic. I didn't believe in ghosts, but apparently Olivia Smith, our beloved HOA president, did. The moment I parked in the driveway, she called 911, screaming that a dangerous man was breaking into the property. Police arrived before I even opened the front door. When I calmly handed them the deed, Olivia's face went pale, like she'd just seen the ghost she'd been talking about. That was the moment I realized something far scarier than spirits was haunting this neighborhood greed. Because if this house was worthless, why was the most powerful woman in the HOA trying so hard to keep me away from it? Turns out there's one thing a Karen fears more than ghosts: losing money. What exactly was she hiding inside that so-called haunted house? Stay with me. You'll want to see what I found next. Comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more HOA stories. People always talk about Pinewood Estates like it's a country club with mailboxes. Perfect hedges matching shutters, joggers who wave with just the right amount of friendliness, never too warm, never too real. The HOA newsletter reads like a minor Constitution font sizes for address plaques, approved mulch colors, times when you can breathe on your lawn without violating subsection D. No one parks on the street overnight. No one lets the trash can show its face before 6:00 a.m. If conformity were a product, Pinewood would have it on auto ship. And then there was the house at the eastern bend of Maple Ridge Lane. It didn't match anything. It stood there like a clenched fist in a row of open palms porch, sagging paint, peeled to the bone, 3 windows punched out by weather or rumor or both. A strand of police tape, sun-bleached and brittle, still clung to a porch column. 8 years of vacancy will do strange things to a place. The grass didn't grow so much as rise in tufts the way old hair does. Weeds learned each other's names. The sycamore out front had leaned forward as if trying to see whether anyone would ever come home. Every neighborhood needs a story to keep itself obedient. Pinewood's story was that this house was haunted. The whispers started with the previous owner, a retired engineering professor named Henry Morrison, who, if you listen to the HOA gossip, died inside on a windy night that made the roof talk. No funeral anyone could recall, no relatives anyone ever met. After that, the house developed a personality, lights flickering just past midnight, a music box that played, although nobody wound it, footsteps pacing behind the upstairs banister. More than one real estate agent said the air felt heavy, like a lecture you didn't study for. Couples toured once and called their agents at dawn to cancel. One newlywed pair actually bought it, lasted 2 weeks. They left the couch a pan with unfinished sauce on the stove and a mirror on the hall wall that neighbors later swore showed someone else standing in the reflection. Pinewood made sure the tale stuck. The bargain price kept dropping: $250,000 to $120,000 to $20,000. And then, because folklore always outruns math, it slid into the absurd $100. Cheaper than a traffic ticket. Still, nobody wanted it. Nobody except me. I found the listing buried under distressed properties, as if the website itself didn't want to admit it was hosting the ad. A $100 house is like a dare written in neon. I'm a retired engineer. Numbers and structures have always made more sense to me than panic. I drove out, parked across from the sycamore, and stared at the porch long enough for a jogger to loop the block twice and report me to her private sense of security. The house didn't feel haunted. It felt lonely, like it had waited for the neighborhood to remember gratitude, and the neighborhood never did. I walked the perimeter camera on my phone rolling because habit is a religion after 15 years of job sites and incident reports. Rot in the deck boards. Foundation intact, a happy surprise. Roofline straight enough to be salvageable. Gutters, however, looked like they'd been taught nihilism. Big lot. Corner position. The kind of place if you took off the fear and put on some sweat that would breathe differently. That's when I met Olivia Smith, in her natural habitat, the middle of the sidewalk, hands perched on hips like architectural brackets. "May I ask what you're doing?" she said, smile lacquered over a grimace. Looking, I said, "It's for sale." "Oh, that." She glanced at the house like it had squirted ketchup on her sleeve. "We prefer to keep curiosity to a minimum. Safety risk, unstable framing, mold, probably asbestos. We've had incidents." "Incidents, a presence," she said, dropping her voice, a register lower the way people do when they want their lies to sound like secrets. My phone kept recording. "Do you live nearby? I'm the HOA president," she said, as if that were a zip code. "Olivia Smith, James Anderson." She did the look cataloging, my boots, my elbows, my haircut, weighing me against the HOA handbook she clearly slept with under her pillow. It's not suitable, she said crisply. Even if you bought it, Pinewood has standards. People have tried to flip that place. It doesn't take. It's not under HOA jurisdiction, I said. Built in 1976. Pinewood organized in 1981. I checked the plats. Her smile thinned. We have ways of ensuring community harmony. Ghosts or lawyers, I asked. Sometimes both. That should have been the end of it, but if there's one thing an engineer learns, it's that error bars tell you where to keep looking. Why does an HOA president care so much about a place that supposedly drops the neighborhood's blood pressure by simply being empty? Her urgency wasn't about safety. It smelled like profit wearing perfume. I went home and started pulling threads. County records, planning commission minutes, traffic studies on city websites that no one reads unless they're bored or hunting. Pinewood had been mentioned in a preliminary corridor assessment for a new highway spur, the sort of project cities whisper to themselves years before they learn how to say it out loud. The maps were fuzzy on purpose, the way all early maps are, but the dotted swath ran within shouting distance of the eastern edge of Pinewood. If it happened, land values would jump as if someone had installed springs under the lawns. The next day, the rumor mill churned, which is to say 3 emails and 2 next-door posts claimed a friend of a friend had felt a cold hand on the Maple Ridge porch. Another suggested the soil was contaminated. A third said bats lived in the chimney and preferred the taste of men. I'm not making that up. I returned at dusk with a flashlight and a crisp $100 cashier's check in my pocket. The lockbox key stuck for a second, then surrendered, and the front door opened with the sigh of old hinges, remembering they were allowed to move. Inside, dust, like gray snowfall, a runner rug that had taught itself to be flat again, a faint scent of cedar and something sweeter. A music box sat on the hallway console lid closed. I tapped it. It didn't play. The heavy presence felt like air that needed a window cracked, which I obliged. I spoke to the empty rooms the way you do when you're humoring someone else's superstition. I'm James. I'm not here to strip you for parts. In the kitchen, a red tag from 8 years ago warned utilities off do not operate. Upstairs, the floorboards protested and then accepted me. One bedroom had wallpaper with tiny sailboats. Another had a bulletin board with 3 pushpins still clinging to duty. In the study, a framed diploma lay face down on the carpet. I flipped it Henry Morrison, Ph.D., Civil Engineering. The date matched Pinewood's origin story almost to the year. I didn't feel watched. I felt recruited. On the way out, headlights swelled across the driveway. Olivia again, this time with a man in a city vehicle idling at the curb logo for the Department of Planning stenciled on the door like a coincidence. This area is closed after dark, she announced. To who, I asked. The moon. The man stepped out, smoothing his tie as if that might iron his conscience. Routine safety patrol, he said. He had Olivia's chin and none of her talent for disguising motives. Name, I asked. He hesitated. Brian. Smith, I said. Olivia's smile turned into a zipper. We're leaving, she said to him, then back to me. If you value your sleep, you'll avoid this property. There's a moment in every puzzle when the pieces stop pretending they're strangers. Highway spur, planning department, HOA president who shows up twice in 24 hours to scare off a buyer for a house that supposedly scares everyone else away, all by itself. I could smell the profit crashing into the propaganda. I called a friend from my old project days, a traffic engineer with a memory like a file cabinet. Off the record, I said, are they really pushing a spur along the east edge near Pinewood? He paused. I didn't tell you this, he said, which is how you know something true is coming, but they've dusted off the feasibility. 2 years of study minimum. If it clears, environmental parcels along that corridor are going to sing. How close to Maple Ridge? Close enough to hear the chorus. I slept 5 hours and woke with a decision standing at the foot of my bed. Before sunrise, I returned to the listing agent with the check. She looked at it, then at me, then at the house on her screen as if it might bite. You're sure? She asked. I'm sure. Why? Because the only ghosts here are rumors, I said, and rumors have fingerprints. We signed the papers in an office that smelled like toner and quiet panic. By noon, Olivia had called me twice and left one voicemail suggesting Pinewood could assist with disposal if I changed my mind. Assist, I've learned, is HOA shorthand for sterilize. I walked the property line with a notepad and a grin I hadn't earned yet. A pair of crows debated the roofline. The porch sagged less in daylight. I ran my hand along the brick, thinking of the professor who'd lived here and of how grief can curdle into myth when no one is brave enough to hold it. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. You don't understand what you've bought. Return the keys. No punctuation, which made the threat feel breathless. I wrote back, I understand perfectly. See you at the neighborhood meeting. You already know what happened when I parked in the driveway for the first time as the owner. You saw the flashing lights and heard Olivia's 911 performance. You watched me hand the deed to the officers like a magician, revealing the last card was the truth all along. But the real story started before the sirens. It started with a house that everyone was told to fear, and a woman who needed that fear more than she needed honesty. It started with a map inked in dotted lines, and a brother whose silence cost less than he hoped to gain. It started with Pinewood's favorite bedtime story, and the morning I stopped believing it. I didn't buy a haunted house. I bought a secret someone else wanted to keep, and I was just getting started. The morning I signed the closing papers, Pinewood Estates looked unusually still. No joggers, no sprinklers, not even the faint buzz of lawnmowers. Just silence, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for me to realize I didn't belong there. But I've never been the type to ask permission to exist. When I pulled into the driveway, the old haunted house sign someone had nailed to the fence was gone. Instead, a brand new one stood crooked in the ground, Private Property HOA Enforcement Pending. I almost laughed. HOA enforcement, on a house that wasn't even under their jurisdiction. That's when I noticed her Olivia Smith standing near the curb in her pastel blazer holding a clipboard like a weapon. Her lipstick matched her rage. She waved as if this were some pleasant misunderstanding. Mr. Anderson, I just wanted a word before you make any irreversible decisions. I stepped out of my truck, papers in hand. Morning, Olivia. You're just in time to see a $100 miracle. She smiled thinly. Let's be reasonable. I'm sure you're a decent man. But this property is not what it seems. Oh, I'm counting on that. She looked around, making sure neighbors could see her being helpful. Then she dropped her voice. Look, I'll make you an offer. $5,000 cash today. Walk away, no hard feelings. $5,000. For a house she swore was haunted and worthless. I let the number hang in the air. You must really hate ghosts. Excuse me, or maybe you hate the idea of someone else owning your little secret. Color drained from her face. She tried to recover, flipping through papers. $10,000. Final offer. I'll even handle the paperwork. That's very generous, I said, smiling, but I'm keeping it. You see, I've already started making plans for renovations. For the first time, her voice cracked. You don't understand what you're walking into. Oh, I think I do, I said quietly. And I think you do too. That was the first time she didn't have a comeback. She just turned, muttered something about safety codes, and walked away fast enough to make her heels click like gunfire. 2 days later, I started moving in. Nothing fancy, just a mattress, a folding table, and a toolbox. The air inside smelled of dust, and something metallic like old secrets. I was unpacking a drill when the sound of sirens echoed down the street. Through the cracked window, I saw red and blue lights flashing. A police SUV stopped in front of my driveway. 2 officers stepped out, hands on holsters. One of them called out, "Sir, can you step outside?" I walked out calmly, deed folder in hand. "Everything all right, officers. Ma'am over there reported a break-in," one of them said, nodding toward Olivia, who stood dramatically across the street, phone in hand, pretending to tremble. "Of course she did," I said dryly, handing them the documents. "James Anderson, legal owner of 19 Maple Ridge. Bought it 3 days ago." "Want to see the bill of sale?" The younger officer scanned the papers, looked at the older one, and nodded. "It checks out. Sorry, sir. False alarm." "Don't apologize," I said loud enough for Olivia to hear. "It's not your fault. Some people can't handle losing control." Olivia froze as the older cop turned toward her. "Ma'am, you're aware false reporting is a misdemeanor offense. I thought. Maybe next time you think before you dial." They drove off. Olivia didn't. She just stood there watching me, her expression a mix of fury and disbelief, like I'd stolen the ending of her favorite story. The next morning, I woke to find a note taped to my mailbox. It wasn't signed. "You're not welcome here. Leave while you still can." Beneath it, someone had spray-painted "freak" on my fence in sloppy red letters. I laughed, took photos, and uploaded them to the Pinewood HOA group chat with the caption, "Morning Art Project." Anyone missing a can of paint? Within minutes, comments poured in, some shocked, others suspiciously silent. Then Olivia chimed in, "Let's all remember to stay civil." "We don't know what provoked this incident," I replied. "You mean besides the HOA president filing false police reports?" She didn't answer. But later that afternoon, I noticed 2 women walking their dogs stop in front of my house, whispering. One pointed toward me, the other shook her head. The next day, the whispers had multiplied. The HOA grapevine was in full bloom. It started small. I heard he used to be in trouble with the law, then he's dangerous around children. By week's end, someone had posted on the neighborhood forum claiming I was a registered offender who changed his name. I confronted the rumor head on. Really, which registry? Because I'd love to meet my evil twin. The silence that followed was its own confession. But the damage was done. Parents stopped letting their kids bike past my driveway. The mail carrier avoided eye contact. A man who used to wave every morning now turned his back as I passed. It would have been easy to pack up, sell, and walk away. But I'd seen this tactic before corporate bullies, small-town tyrants, HOA queens who think gossip is a weapon. The goal wasn't to scare me, it was to isolate me. Then one evening, as I fixed a flickering porch light, an old voice rasped behind me, "You're not the first one she's tried to ruin." I turned. An elderly man in suspenders leaned on his cane, watching me from the sidewalk. His eyes were sharp despite the wrinkles. "Dave Miller," he said, offering his hand. "Lived here since '86, retired postal worker. Seen this neighborhood chew people up." "Let me guess," I said. "Olivia." He nodded. "5 families before you. She spread rumors, filed complaints, made their lives hell until they sold. Then she or her friends rescued the properties for pennies. And the haunted house story," Dave chuckled. "That one's her masterpiece. She started it after Henry Morrison died. He was the only one who refused to join the HOA. House was grandfathered in, and she hated that. So she made sure nobody wanted it. It all clicked: the fake ghost stories, the sudden 911 call, the panic when I bought it. Olivia wasn't afraid of a haunting. She was afraid I'd uncovered her scam." I leaned against the porch rail. "Why hasn't anyone stopped her? She's clever," Dave said. "She hides behind rules. Every time someone pushes back, she buries them in bylaws until they give up." "Not this time," I said. "I'm not afraid of paperwork." Dave's grin was slow, tired, and hopeful. "You sound like Henry. He was stubborn too." I didn't sleep much that night. The wind brushed the shutters, making a low hum that could almost be mistaken for whispering. Maybe Henry was still here watching the circus he left behind. Or maybe it was just my mind rehearsing the next step. Either way, I decided something as the clock hit midnight. If Olivia wanted a war, I'd give her one, but on my terms. The next morning, I bought 8 motion-activated cameras and installed them around the property. 1 facing the gate, 2 on the porch, 1 in each corner of the yard. I also set up a cloud backup because you never rely on hardware when your enemy owns half the neighborhood. By the end of the week, they'd already caught something. At 2, 4, 7 a.m., a figure in a pink blazer crouched near my mailbox snapping photos. She crept to the gate, peered through, then hurried off when my porch light clicked on. The next day, I printed a still frame and slid it into an envelope addressed to Pinewood HOA, President's Office. No note, no comment. Just evidence. An hour later, I received an email. "Mr. Anderson, I suggest you stop with the childish accusations. You're only making things worse for yourself. OS perfect." Now I had digital proof she'd acknowledged it. By the end of the month, Olivia had shifted tactics from rumors to harassment. HOA notices appeared in my mailbox, citing yard maintenance violations, unauthorized structure repairs, and disturbing community harmony. I sent them back with a sticky note. "Not under HOA jurisdiction. But thanks for the concern." Her silence after that wasn't peace. It was plotting. And sure enough, it came an anonymous letter slipped under my door. "You think you're clever. You don't know who you're dealing with." I laughed out loud. "Oh, I do," I said to the empty house. "A woman who's about to lose everything. Because I wasn't just collecting ghost stories anymore. I was collecting evidence." The game had started, and this time the haunted house was on my side. By the time the second HOA notice landed in my mailbox, I had already stopped being angry. Anger wastes focus. What I felt now was something sharper: discipline. Every engineer knows that if a system keeps producing bad results, you don't yell at it, you study it, you log every output, you measure the noise until it sings. So that's what I did with Olivia Smith. The first step was documentation. I built a folder on my desktop called Pinewood Integrity Project, because naming things makes them real. Inside it, I stored photos of vandalism, screenshots of every false HOA message, and copies of the anonymous threats. Then I started recording. Every encounter, every conversation, every word that left her mouth. One afternoon, I was adjusting the fence camera when Olivia strutted down the sidewalk in her signature pink blazer, pretending to walk her dog, except the leash was empty. "Still recording everything, Mr. Anderson," she said, glancing at the camera. "Smile," I replied. "You're on candid hypocrisy." Her lips tightened. You really think you can intimidate me with gadgets? This community answers to the HOA, not to you. Funny, I said. This property doesn't answer to you either. Her eyes flicked toward the red recording light, and for a second she dropped the smile. Careful, James. You're making enemies you can't afford. I build bridges, I said. But I also know how to collapse one safely when it's rotten. She walked off without replying. I made sure the footage uploaded twice cloud and backup drive. That night I called an old contact from my contracting days. His name was Ethan Clark, a private investigator who had once tracked down a subcontractor skimming supply budgets on a highway project. If there was a lie buried under a paper trail, Ethan could find it. I told him I need everything you can dig up on Olivia Smith. HOA records financials, family connections, especially with the city. He whistled softly. You're poking a hornet's nest. Good, I said. I brought smoke. While Ethan started his digging, I focused on the other front reputation. The gossip mill that Olivia weaponized against me could work both ways. I launched a small website titled jamesanderson.in, FO simple, factual, impossible to refute. I posted my public record professional licenses and a clean background check. Underneath I wrote, to my new neighbors in Pinewood Estates, rumors fade but facts remain. Transparency builds stronger communities. I'll start with mine. Within 2 days, visits from Pinewood IP addresses skyrocketed. No comments, no emails, but the silence had a different texture now. It wasn't judgment, it was doubt. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. Motion detected front yard. I opened the feed and froze. Olivia, flashlight in hand, was photographing my driveway. Behind her, someone was crouched near my gate, dumping a black bag over the fence. Got you, I whispered. By sunrise, I had pulled still frames from every camera angle. When I opened the bag, it was filled with shredded documents and half-burned HOA forms. A few scraps, still readable maintenance invoices, fake signatures, mismatched amounts. I called the county sheriff's office and reported illegal dumping and possible evidence destruction. The responding deputy squinted at the photos. You sure that's her positive? Zoom in on the earrings, same pair she wore at last month's HOA meeting. I can show you the recording. He nodded slowly. We'll document it. Before he left, he added under his breath, You're making some waves, Mr. Anderson. Be careful, they don't like being exposed. Good, I said. I prefer rough seas. That afternoon, Ethan called. You were right, he said. Her brother's not just in the city planning department. He's the deputy director. And guess which proposed highway corridor runs past Pinewood's eastern border? I leaned forward. The one that touches my property. Exactly. If the route is approved, every parcel within a quarter-mile triples in value. She's been buying properties through Shell LLCs, 5 of them all under different names, but the same mailing address. I sent you the documents. I stared at the files as they downloaded. Property deeds, company registrations, bank transfers. It wasn't greed, it was infrastructure-level manipulation. She tried to buy my house 6 times, I murmured. That wasn't about haunting, that was about flipping. And there's more, Ethan said. Her HOA fund withdrawals don't add up. Over 100 grand, missing across 4 fiscal years. I can't prove theft yet, but the numbers smell. I thanked him and hung up, adrenaline humming like an electric wire. The next call I made was to Dave Miller. When he answered, his voice was rough with sleep. I knew you'd find something. Meet me tomorrow, I said. Bring whatever you know about HOA finances. We met at his kitchen table the next morning. The walls were lined with photographs of mail trucks, grandkids, and one framed letter from the Postal Service honoring 30 years of unbroken service. Dave didn't just deliver mail, he remembered everything it carried. He opened a folder. I kept the old newsletters, budget reports, and fee statements. I may be retired, but I've got eyes. Olivia's been reallocating funds for years. New pool chairs, fake landscaping projects, phantom maintenance. None of it ever happened. He showed me copies of checks made out to Whitmore Maintenance LLC, a name I didn't recognize. Who's Whitmore? I asked. Her husband Dave said. He runs a garage 2 towns over. This company doesn't exist outside the invoices. We both sat back, the realization landing heavy. She's laundering HOA funds into her own pocket, I said. Dave nodded. And every time someone questions it, they get labeled a troublemaker, or worse. She scared most folks into silence. I smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time the silence got broken. I contacted a local attorney recommended by a former colleague, Sarah Chen, a sharp, methodical woman known for untangling municipal fraud cases. We met at a small office overlooking the courthouse square. After listening to everything, she folded her hands. James, you have 2 angles. defamation, and corruption. On defamation, her lies already meet the threshold for damages. But the corruption, embezzlement, conflict of interest that's bigger will need evidence admissible in court. I have video timestamps, documents, witnesses. Good, she said, but get financial records, HOA budgets, bank statements, audit reports. She can't bury the truth if we shine a light on her ledgers. She slid a legal pad toward me. Start with a formal written request for financial transparency. Under state HOA, law members have the right to inspect records within 10 business days. She'll never comply. Exactly, Sarah said, which means we'll have grounds to escalate. Over the next week, I followed her advice to the letter. Step 1, I emailed the HOA board requesting a full audit of expenses from the past 5 years. Step 2, I printed and hand-delivered the same request during their monthly meeting, recording everything. Olivia's face stiffened when I entered the clubhouse. You don't belong here, Mr. Anderson. This isn't a circus. I agree, I said. That's why I brought tickets. I waived the formal request. Consider this an official demand under the HOA Transparency Act. Her jaw tightened. Those records are confidential. Not from homeowners, I said, unless you've got something to hide. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a man named Karen Walters, muttered, "He's got a point, Olivia." Her glare could have melted asphalt. Meeting adjourned, she snapped, but it was too late. The moment was recorded. Her refusal was on tape. That night, as I sat on the porch reviewing footage, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Anderson. The voice was low, shaky. This is Carol from Lot 17. I think I have something you should see. Within minutes, she texted a photo, an HOA expense ledger page, showing community landscaping $22,800. In the margin, someone had scribbled paid to Whitmore Maintenance. Carol wrote, "She told us it was for new irrigation, but they never installed anything." I smiled. The dominoes were starting to fall. By the weekend, I had 3 allies, Dave Carroll and a young couple from Lot 11, who discovered they'd been overcharged late fees they never owed. I invited them over for coffee and laid out the timeline. First, we gather all victims, I said. Then we present everything to Sarah. After that, the state attorney gets involved. Carol looked nervous. She'll retaliate. She already has, I said. Now we make it count. On Sunday morning, I walked outside to find my front lawn blanketed with trash bags, rotten food, shredded paper, broken glass. A final insult. I didn't curse or call the police right away. I just aimed my phone at the security feed. There she was again, Olivia 3:23 a.m., tossing garbage from her SUV trunk wearing gloves. I smiled. Got you again. An hour later, 2 deputies arrived. When I showed them the footage, one let out a low whistle. "This is harassment," he said. "We'll file an incident report. You might want to talk to a lawyer about restraining orders." "I already have one," I said, "and she's going to love this case." That night, I emailed Sarah the video evidence, the invoices, and Ethan's findings. Her reply came 15 minutes later. "James, this is gold. We're past harassment now. We're looking at embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of office. Let's prepare the complaint and subpoena the financials. The bigger the web, the harder she'll fall." I closed the laptop and leaned back, listening to the quiet creak of my old house. Somewhere upstairs, the floorboards groaned in rhythm with the wind. Some people would have called it a ghost. I called it applause. The haunted house wasn't cursed. It was cleansing itself one secret at a time. And the woman who ruled Pinewood Estates like a queen, her kingdom was starting to crack. When the subpoena arrived at Pinewood Estates' HOA office, the entire neighborhood felt it. You could sense it in the way curtains twitched and mailboxes opened slower that morning. By lunchtime, Olivia Smith's name was being whispered like a curse. Someone finally had the nerve to drag the Queen of Pinewood into the daylight. The first time I saw her after that was at the grocery store. She stood by the self-checkout with a basket of organic lemons, pretending not to notice me. But the moment our eyes met, her hands froze on the scanner. The machine beeped again and again. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Anderson," she said sweetly, "I hope you're enjoying your legal crusade." "I'm enjoying the truth," I said. "You should try it. I hear it's refreshing." She dropped a lemon. It rolled across the floor and disappeared beneath a shelf. Neither of us bent to pick it up. The court order required her to turn over 5 years of HOA financial records within 10 days. When the deadline hit, she tried to delay it, claiming technical difficulties. Sarah filed a motion for contempt within the hour. The judge granted it. 2 days later, the documents arrived in a battered cardboard box, dropped unceremoniously at Sarah's office. Inside were ledgers, invoices, and printed bank statements, some with coffee stains, others missing pages. Typical, Sarah muttered. When people panic, they get sloppy. We spread everything across her desk. I took a notebook, she opened her laptop, and Dave Miller joined us with a magnifying glass like a detective out of retirement. The deeper we dug, the uglier it became. Dozens of maintenance expenses had been paid to the same vendor, Whitmore Maintenance LLC, Olivia's husband's phantom company. $8,700 for electrical upgrades that never happened. $12,500 for pool filter replacement, even though Pinewood's pool had been closed for renovations that entire year. Then Sarah found the bombshell. James, look at this one. She pointed to a $35,000 withdrawal labeled Community Enhancement Initiative, Overseas Conference. What HOA conference takes place in Italy, I asked. Dave snorted. The kind where the president comes home with a tan and a new Lexus. We laughed, but none of us were really amused. By the time we finished, the total was staggering. $127,000 missing over 4 years. Every cent tied to Olivia Smith's name. Sarah leaned back in her chair. This isn't just HOA mismanagement. This is felony embezzlement. I nodded. Then let's make it public. That night I drafted a simple post for the private neighborhood forum. Transparency is the heart of trust. Below are verified financial inconsistencies in Pinewood Estates' HOA records confirmed by legal counsel. Homeowners deserve accountability. Ask your board where your money went. I attached a few screenshots, nothing confidential, just enough to show the pattern. Within an hour, the comments exploded. Wait, what my HOA fees paid for this? She said that money went to new sidewalks. Are we sure this is real? Then one brave soul posted, I work in accounting. These numbers don't lie. That was the match. By midnight, half the neighborhood had joined a new group chat I created called Pinewood Transparency Alliance. The other half stayed silent, but even silence was a kind of admission now. Olivia tried to regain control the next morning. A glossy HOA newsletter appeared in every mailbox, titled, Fake News and Defamation, The Truth About Pinewood Estates. It accused me of spreading misinformation, misinterpreting financial data, and undermining community unity. I read it on my porch while sipping coffee and smiled. If she's printing propaganda, I told Dave she's losing control. He chuckled. Her printer ink budget alone could be another embezzlement charge. The next HOA meeting was standing room only. Normally, they drew 10 board residents. That night, nearly 60 people packed into the clubhouse. The air was electric, buzzing with quiet fury. Olivia sat at the head of the long oak table, flanked by 2 board members who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. Her perfect posture was gone. The mask had cracks. Sarah stood beside me, calm and professional. We'd already filed our lawsuit demanding a full audit and restitution, but tonight wasn't about the court. It was about hearts and minds. When the floor opened for public comment, Carol from Lot 17 stood up first. Her voice trembled, but her words hit like stones. I've lived here 12 years. I trusted this board. I believed the newsletters. And now I find out our dues went to fund your vacations. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Olivia tried to interject, but Carol wasn't finished. You told us we couldn't afford to repair the playground. You told us to tighten our belts. Meanwhile, you were tightening yours with diamonds. Laughter and gasps mixed in equal measure. I stepped forward next. All we're asking for is honesty, I said. No one is above accountability. The HOA is supposed to serve homeowners, not exploit them. Olivia slammed her gavel. This meeting is over. Sarah's voice cut through like a scalpel. Actually, it's not. Under HOA bylaws, a motion to adjourn requires a majority vote. All in favor of continuing. Every hand except Olivia's went up. Her face went pale. You people don't understand, no, Dave interrupted from the back. We understand perfectly. You've been stealing from us. The next day, the audit report arrived from the independent accounting firm Sarah had recommended. It confirmed everything and more. Olivia had used HOA funds not only for vacations but also for home remodeling, jewelry, and car payments. The report even uncovered falsified receipts printed from her husband's company letterhead. Sarah read aloud one of the statements during our follow-up meeting. Payment for pool equipment $9,800. Bank record shows a deposit the same day to Olivia Smith's personal account. I exhaled. Got her. We compiled the documents into a 70-page binder and filed an official complaint with the county prosecutor's office. Within 48 hours, investigators began contacting homeowners for statements. Olivia's empire was collapsing faster than a house of cards in a storm. Still, I knew she wouldn't go quietly. That night, I received a text from an unknown number. "You've made a big mistake. You'll regret this." I replied with a photo, her standing in my driveway at 2:47 a.m., from last month's footage. Then I added, "You first." No response. A week later, a small local news station ran a headline, "HOA President Under Investigation for Financial Misconduct." It featured quotes from residents including Carol and Dave. My name appeared once homeowner James Anderson provided key evidence leading to the investigation. By evening, the entire town was talking about Pinewood Estates. When I stepped outside to collect my mail, 2 neighbors waved. One even brought a pie. "Sorry we believed the rumors," she said. "You were right." I accepted the apology, but didn't gloat. Justice wasn't a performance. It was a slow, deliberate process. At sunset, Dave joined me on the porch holding 2 beers. "Feels different out here," he said, looking down the peaceful street. "Like the air's finally honest again." "It's not over yet," I said. "She's not the kind to surrender." "She will," Dave said. "Bullies always do once someone tells them no loud enough." We clinked bottles. The cicadas hummed like a background applause track. The next morning, Olivia's SUV was gone. No morning walk, no clipboard, no smile. The neighborhood chat said she'd called an emergency board meeting downtown, but no one knew where. That afternoon, Sarah phoned me. "She's retained a defense attorney, one of those high-profile guys who specialize in spin control. We're expecting counterclaims soon. But don't worry, James. You've got more than enough evidence." "Good," I said, "because I'm not stopping at defamation. I want every stolen dollar back for this community." "And you'll get it," Sarah replied. "One motion at a time." That evening, the HOA board, without Olivia, voted to suspend her indefinitely pending the investigation. The motion passed 8-0. I received an email from one of the remaining members, "Mr. Anderson, thank you for your persistence. You've reminded us what this HOA was supposed to be, a community, not a kingdom." For the first time since moving in, I felt like Pinewood might actually deserve saving. I stood on the porch as the sun dipped behind the sycamore tree, the same one that had once shadowed a haunted legend. The house creaked gently, as if exhaling after years of tension. "Looks like we're winning, Professor I," whispered toward the ceiling. Somewhere inside, a loose shutter tapped twice against the wall. I smiled. Maybe it was the wind, or maybe Henry Morrison was clapping. Either way, the haunting was finally changing sides. The morning after the suspension notice went public, Pinewood Estates felt strangely peaceful. The air was lighter. The tension that once clung to every front yard was gone. Neighbors waved again, kids played near the cul-de-sac, and for the first time I thought maybe, just maybe, this war was ending. I should have known better. Because when you corner someone like Olivia Smith, they don't surrender. They burn the whole room down and call it victory. It started with whispers again. This time the lies weren't just recycled, they were weaponized. Anonymous emails spread through the neighborhood with subject lines like "Protect your families" and "What James Anderson doesn't want you to know." The messages accused me of everything imaginable: fraud, harassment, even predatory behavior. They included doctored screenshots and fake police reports. Olivia had gone from rumor to full-on digital warfare. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Dave called first. "She's lost it, James," he said. "She's telling everyone you're dangerous. Some of the younger parents are panicking. One idiot even suggested putting up flyers." I exhaled slowly. Let her. Every lie she spreads digs her hole deeper. But when I stepped outside later that afternoon, the sight made my stomach tighten. There they were, flyers stapled to mailboxes, taped to stop signs, pinned to trees. My photo ripped from a public website, printed in black and white, under the headline "Community Warning." Below it a single sentence in bold: "This man has a record, protect your children." I tore one down my hands, shaking not from fear but fury. I'd faced worse than slander before, but this was different. This was personal. I marched straight to the police station, folder in hand. Deputy Collins, the same officer who'd handled the earlier vandalism reports, met me at the counter. "She's escalating," I said, spreading the flyers on his desk. "Defamation, harassment, malicious falsehood, take your pick." He frowned as he skimmed the pages. "You've got security footage, right? Every night since I moved in." "Good, keep it. I'll file a harassment report." "But James..." He hesitated. "This is turning political now. She's not just fighting you, she's fighting for her reputation. Expect her to get nasty." I gave a humorless smile. She already did. That night someone threw a rock through my kitchen window. The note tied to it read, "You ruined this neighborhood. Leave or we'll make you." I patched the glass before sunrise, uploaded the footage to my cloud drive, and printed the clearest still frame. The figure was hooded, but the car headlights caught a glint of something familiar, a gold HOA lapel pin. So much for subtlety. The next morning, Sarah called. "We've received a countersuit," she said. "Olivia's lawyer filed a complaint alleging you fabricated evidence to extort her." I nearly laughed. "Extort her? For what? Returning stolen HOA money? She's playing the victim," Sarah said. "Claims you harassed a vulnerable woman under stress. It's classic reverse psychology. But don't worry, we'll dismantle it in discovery." "I'm not worried," I said, though my jaw was tight. "Just disappointed." "Good. Keep your cool, James. Her panic is our advantage." A few days later, I discovered she'd called an emergency HOA meeting even though she was suspended. The invitation slid under every door, declared Community Safety Assembly, discussion of troublemakers and threats to Pinewood Estates. I showed it to Dave, who laughed so hard he wheezed. "She's hosting a witch trial without realizing she's the witch. Let's give her an audience," I said. The clubhouse was packed that night. Olivia stood at the front, flanked by two loyalists, one clutching a clipboard, the other glaring like a guard dog. She wore beige instead of her trademark pink, trying to look respectable. She cleared her throat. "We're gathered tonight to address the dangerous misinformation spreading through our community." I stood at the back, arms folded. She continued, "A certain homeowner has launched a malicious campaign to discredit our leadership. He's violated privacy spread, doctored documents," and I interrupted. "You mean the leadership that embezzled $127,000? The room erupted in murmurs. Someone shouted, "Show us the books, Olivia." Her voice cracked. "This is not a courtroom." "No," I said, stepping forward, "but it might feel like one soon." Sarah had joined me quietly, holding a manila envelope. She handed it to me, then addressed the room. "For everyone here, this contains court-certified copies of the audit, Olivia's bank transfers, and her husband's fake invoices. These are not opinions, these are facts." Gasps filled the room. One board member stood up. "I resign," he said simply, and walked out. Olivia pounded the table with her fist. "This is an ambush. None of this proves anything." "Then explain the $35,000 trip to Italy," Sarah said. Olivia froze. The silence was thunderous. Then she did something no one expected. She screamed, "You're all ungrateful. I built this neighborhood. Without me, Pinewood would be nothing but weeds and noise." The crowd recoiled. Someone muttered, "She's gone mad." I took a step closer. "No, Olivia. Pinewood would be fine. It's the greed that poisoned it." Before she could answer, the sound of sirens pierced the night outside. Everyone turned as two sheriff's deputies entered, led by Deputy Collins. "Olivia Smith," he said firmly, "you're under investigation for obstruction of justice. We have a warrant to search your residence and office." Her mouth opened, then shut again. The clipboard fell from her hand. "This is absurd," she shouted. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president." "Not anymore," Collins said. "You're suspended. And we have probable cause." The crowd watched as she stormed out, yelling threats that sounded more desperate than dangerous. You'd think that would have been the end, but people like Olivia don't just disappear overnight. 2 days later, her husband Richard was caught breaking into my property at 3 a.m. The motion camera caught everything, him creeping toward my shed with a crowbar glancing nervously over his shoulder. When the police arrived, he confessed almost instantly. "She told me to," he said, shaking. "She said there was evidence here that could ruin her. I didn't want to. She made me do it." I watched him from my porch as they led him away in handcuffs. His shoulders slumped and I almost pitied him. Almost. By the weekend, the story was everywhere. Local papers, online forums, even a regional news channel. HOA president under criminal investigation after fraud allegations. Reporters parked at the entrance to Pinewood Estates. Neighbors gave statements. Some claimed they always suspected something was off. Others swore they were blindsided. Dave just shook his head. Funny how nobody believed a thing until it was on the evening news. "Fear makes people blind," I said. "Now they're just waking up." That night I sat on the porch with Sarah and Dave. The house, once a symbol of isolation, now felt alive, windows glowing softly, the sound of cicadas mixing with distant chatter. Sarah checked her phone. The DA's office confirmed it. They're preparing formal charges. Embezzlement, defamation, obstruction, and conspiracy. It's over. I exhaled, feeling months of tension bleed away. Not yet. She'll try one last move. Sarah smirked. Then let her. Every move she makes now just helps the prosecution. Sure enough, the next morning my phone pinged with an email from Olivia's lawyer. Settlement proposal: James Anderson agrees to withdraw all civil complaints in exchange for a public apology and $20 0 inches compensation. I stared at it for a long time before typing my reply, declined. Justice isn't for sale. I hit send. Later that evening, I took a slow walk around the property. The repairs were nearly finished, new windows cleaned, siding, trimmed hedges. The old haunted house was alive again. For the first time since I bought it, the place felt like home. As I reached the porch steps, Dave's voice called out from across the street. "Heard she's lawyering up for a plea deal." "Good," I said. "Maybe she'll finally learn what consequences feel like." He grinned. "You did it, James. You broke the curse." I looked back at the house, its windows reflecting the sunset in gold. "No," I said softly. "The house did. It just needed someone to believe in it." That night, I slept without checking the cameras. The world outside could wait. Because for the first time in Pinewood's history, the only thing haunting this place wasn't ghosts, it was the truth. The courthouse smelled like cold marble and old coffee, the scent of justice on a budget. When I walked through the front doors that morning, a dozen cameras turned in my direction. I wasn't used to attention, but Pinewood Estates had become a headline, and everyone wanted a piece of the spectacle. The sign on the courtroom door read, "State of Nebraska versus Olivia Smith." Seeing her name printed like that official final was almost surreal. For months she'd ruled our neighborhood like a dictator with a clipboard. Now she stood beneath fluorescent lights a defendant instead of a queen. She was dressed in beige, the kind of color people choose when they want to look innocent. Her lawyer, a polished man with too much hair gel, whispered something to her as we entered. She didn't look at me, but I caught the tremor in her hands. Sarah Chen, my attorney, greeted me with her usual calm confidence. "Today's the big one," she said. "Stay composed. The facts are on our side." "I'm fine," I said. "I've been waiting for this since the day she called 911 on me." The room filled quickly, neighbors, reporters, even a few city officials from the planning department. Dave sat in the second row, arms folded, looking like a proud grandfather watching a long-delayed graduation. When the judge entered, everyone rose. He was an older man with a steady voice and the kind of expression that didn't suffer fools. "Court is now in session," he said. "Case number 2, 4C, V913, State of Nebraska versus Olivia Smith, charged with embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and criminal defamation." Olivia's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. She is a respected community leader, not a criminal." Sarah stood next. "And yet, Your Honor, we have documents, witness testimony, and bank records showing over $127 0-inches HOA funds diverted into her personal accounts. Respect doesn't erase theft." The judge nodded slowly. "Proceed." The prosecution began with the financial evidence. Exhibit after exhibit was displayed: forged invoices, bank transfers, fake maintenance reports. On the screen, the pattern was undeniable, each transaction leading straight to Olivia's signature. One photo in particular silenced the room: a smiling Olivia in front of the Trevi Fountain in Rome, captioned "HOA Conference 2019, funded entirely by the community's maintenance budget." Her lawyer objected. "Irrelevant personal photo." The judge shook his head. Overruled. The court recognizes this as evidence of misuse of funds. Olivia's face turned the color of wet clay. Next came the witnesses. Carol, from Lot 17, took the stand first, hands trembling slightly, but voice steady. She told us the HOA couldn't afford to fix the playground, she said. "We held fundraisers. I even baked for them. But the money never went where she said it did." "Did you ever question her directly?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes. She told me I was being ungrateful and threatened to fine me for slander." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Then came Dave Miller. He walked up slowly, cane-tapping the tile, but when he spoke, his voice carried more authority than anyone expected. "I've lived in Pinewood for 37 years, he said. "I've seen good presidents and bad ones. But Olivia, she turned our neighborhood into her personal bank account. Anyone who questioned her got bullied or smeared. James here wasn't the first. He was just the first who didn't back down." Olivia's lawyer tried to shake him. "Mr. Miller, are you aware your friend Mr. Anderson has a personal vendetta against my client?" Dave smiled faintly. "My only vendettas against crooks." Even the judge had to hide a grin. When it was my turn to testify, I stood, took a breath, and faced the room. "Your Honor, I moved to Pinewood for peace and quiet," I began. "I bought an old house no one wanted because I saw value in it. What I didn't expect was that the real haunting in this neighborhood wasn't ghosts, it was greed. I told them everything: how she'd tried to buy the house from me, how she'd spread rumors, called the police, vandalized my property. I explained the hidden camera footage, the fake invoices, the threats, the lies. Every word felt like scraping rust off an old wound, but it needed to be said." Olivia sat motionless, her eyes on the floor. When I finished, Sarah handed the judge a thick binder labeled Anderson Exhibits 138. "Mr. Anderson," the judge asked, "why didn't you just move away?" I smiled faintly. "Because bullies don't stop when you move. They stop when you make them answer for it." A few people in the gallery clapped before the bailiff quieted them. The defense tried everything, claimed the funds were misallocated, not stolen, argued that I had manipulated the narrative for attention, even accused Sarah of media theatrics. But none of it stuck. The evidence was too precise, too heavy. Then came the final nail. The prosecution called Richard Smith, Olivia's estranged husband. He looked hollow eyes, sunken from sleepless nights. "Mr. Smith," the prosecutor said, "did your wife instruct you to destroy or remove evidence from Mr. Anderson's property?" He hesitated, staring at the floor. "Yes," he whispered. "She said it was the only way to save herself. I didn't want to do it." Olivia slammed her hand on the table. "Liar, you're a coward." The judge banged his gavel. "Mrs. Smith, one more outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt." She slumped back, trembling. When closing arguments began, Sarah's voice was steady as glass. "Your Honor, this case isn't about one corrupt president, it's about power unchecked. The HOA was supposed to protect its residents. Instead, it became her weapon. She spread lies to silence truth, used fear to buy loyalty, and when exposed, she tried to destroy evidence and people. James Anderson didn't seek revenge. He sought accountability. And today, that's what this court can deliver." The room was silent when she sat down. Olivia's lawyer stammered through a weak defense, calling her overzealous rather than criminal. But the damage was done. The judge took a long moment before speaking. "Mrs. Smith, I've reviewed the evidence. It paints a clear, consistent picture. Financial deceit, abuse of authority, and deliberate harm to others for personal gain. You've betrayed the trust of your community." He lifted the sentencing documents. "For the charge of embezzlement restitution of $127,000 to the Pinewood Estates HOA, plus a $25,000 fine. For defamation $75 0.0 damages to Mr. Anderson. For obstruction of justice, 12 months suspended sentence, 200 hours of community service, and a 10-year ban from holding any HOA or public office." He struck the gavel. Sentence delivered. A collective exhale swept through the room. Some neighbors even cheered quietly. Olivia stood there, shaking lips, trembling. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "I was trying to protect Pinewood." "No," the judge said evenly. "You were protecting yourself." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Sarah shielded me with a hand. "No statements," she said, but one question slipped through the noise. "Mr. Anderson, what do you plan to do next?" I looked at the crowd, at the flashes, at the curious faces of people who'd never known what it was like to be the target of someone powerful and petty. "I plan," I said, "to go home." A week later, Pinewood Estates held a special election. Dave Miller won by a landslide. During his first meeting as HOA president, he stood in the same clubhouse Olivia had ruled from and declared, "From now on, transparency isn't optional, it's policy." The room erupted in applause. Olivia, meanwhile, sold her house to pay restitution and left town. Rumor said she'd moved in with relatives in Iowa, working part-time at a real estate office under her maiden name. I didn't celebrate her downfall. I didn't have to. Justice had done that for me. That evening, I sat on my porch with Dave and Sarah, the same spot where this war had started. The sun dipped low behind the sycamore, painting the sky gold. "You did it," Dave said. "No," I replied. "We all did. The truth just needed someone stubborn enough to drag it into the light." Sarah smiled. "You know, most people would have walked away." I looked at the old house, no longer haunted, just peaceful. Walking away never fixes rot. You've got to rebuild from the foundation up. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere inside, a floorboard creaked softly like the ghost of Professor Morrison nodding in approval. Pinewood Estates was quiet again. But this time it wasn't fear keeping everyone silent. It was peace. 6 months passed before Pinewood Estates felt normal again, though truth be told, normal had a different meaning now. Gone were the secret meetings, the petty citations, the fear of a pink blazer silhouette appearing at your doorstep. The air smelled different, lighter, real. The HOA, under Dave's leadership, had transformed almost overnight. Financial reports were now posted online every month. Neighbors volunteered for committees instead of being drafted. The fines dropped by 70%. And for the first time in years, people started talking about community picnics instead of bylaws. One afternoon, while trimming the hedge that separated my property from the road, Dave wandered over with 2 mugs of coffee. Guess what he said? We just voted to remove 3 outdated rules. No more bans on porch swings, flags, or backyard chickens. I laughed. Careful, you'll bring chaos. Chaos builds character, he replied, grinning. Besides, after Olivia, we can handle a few chickens. We sipped our coffee in the golden light, and for the first time since moving here, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like part of something good. The house that once looked like a ghost trap was now my pride and joy. The cracked shutters were replaced, the porch newly stained, the windows shining again. Every nail, every repaired beam reminded me that persistence beats poison. The haunted whispers had disappeared. Children rode bikes past my fence without fear. Sometimes they even waved, and I'd wave back, pretending not to notice when their parents gave small, grateful nods. Then came the news we'd all been waiting for. The state officially approved the new Highway 47 connector project. It would run just 2 miles east of Pinewood. Property values shot up almost overnight. Houses that once sold for $250,000 were now worth over $1 million. When I received the appraisal for mine, I had to read it twice. $900,000. All from a home I'd bought for $100 and a bit of courage. The offers poured in within a week. Realtors called, investors mailed letters. One even knocked on my door waving a briefcase full of documents. Mr. Anderson, I can offer you $950 cash today, he said breathlessly. You'll walk away with a fortune. I smiled politely. I didn't buy this place to walk away. I bought it to stand my ground. He blinked, confused. But you could live anywhere. Exactly, I said, closing the door. And I choose here. Because this wasn't just land or lumber anymore, it was principle. Proof that standing firm means something. One rainy Thursday, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just the embossed logo of a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal letter, a sealed envelope, and a certified check for $200,000. For a second, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the sender's name, the estate of Henry Morrison. I sat down at my kitchen table, rain tapping the windows like applause, and began to read. Dear Mr. Anderson, if you're reading this, then the little house on Maple Ridge has found its next rightful owner. I was once a teacher, a professor of civil engineering. I taught students how to build things that last. One of them was you. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. You stayed after class once to argue that ethics are stronger than concrete. I agreed with you then, and I still do. I kept that house outside the HOA for a reason. I wanted at least one square of this earth that wasn't ruled by signatures and greed. I suspected one day someone honest would find it, someone who didn't scare easy. You've proven me right. Enclosed is a check from a trust I created years ago. It's my way of saying thank you for protecting the home, for defending the principle, and for reminding people that courage doesn't come with a permit. Use it well. Build something that matters. With respect and admiration, Henry Morrison. I read it 3 times before the words truly landed. Henry Morrison, the same man whose ghost story had terrified the neighborhood for a decade, had been my old engineering professor. He must have seen something in me all those years ago, something even I had forgotten. The haunting, the rumors, the fear, it had all been a decoy, a shield. Henry hadn't cursed the property, he'd protected it. That evening, I invited Dave and Sarah over for dinner. I placed the letter and check on the table between us. Dave let out a long whistle. Well, I'll be damned. The man set a trap for greed, and you were the one person who walked in without it catching you. Sarah smiled softly. He knew what he was doing. The only people who'd ever touch a haunted house for $100 are either fools or the brave. You were the latter. I laughed. Maybe a bit of both. What will you do with it? Dave asked. Something good, I said. Something that outlives us. Over the next month, I used part of the inheritance to restore the small study upstairs, keeping Henry's original desk and diploma right where they'd been. I turned it into a memorial room, a quiet space for thought and memory. The rest of the money became the Morrison Anderson Scholarship Fund, designed to help engineering students from low-income families. The first scholarship was awarded to a young woman from the next town over who wanted to study civil engineering to build bridges that last, she wrote. Henry would have loved that line. And just like that, the house's final ghost, the one of unfulfilled purpose, was gone. On the anniversary of the trial, Pinewood hosted a neighborhood barbecue. It wasn't the kind of sterile HOA-approved gathering from the old days. This one had real laughter music, mismatched lawn chairs, and a feeling of freedom in the air. Dave gave a short speech, raising his glass toward me. To James Anderson, he said, for teaching us that integrity isn't a luxury, it's the foundation we build on. Everyone cheered. Even Sarah Ever, the composed lawyer, smiled wide. I looked around and realized something profound. The people who had once crossed the street to avoid me were now friends. The house that had once been feared was now the symbol of Pinewood's rebirth. As the evening settled and the laughter faded into the hum of crickets, I sat alone on my porch watching the last embers of sunset burn out behind the trees. The sycamore swayed gently, its branches creaking the way old friends talk when words aren't needed. I thought of Olivia Smith now, somewhere far away, living quietly under another name. I didn't wish her harm. I hoped she'd learned something about truth the same way Pinewood had. Justice isn't vengeance, it's balance restored. I leaned back, feeling the wooden chair groan beneath me. You were right, Henry, I said softly. Ethics really do outlast concrete. Somewhere inside a floorboard creaked. Just once. Just enough. Good night, Professor, I whispered. The wind carried the sound away like a satisfied sigh. For the first time in years, Pinewood Estates was silent, and it wasn't the silence of fear, it was peace. And as for the haunting, well, maybe ghosts never really leave. Maybe they just rest once the living finally learn their lesson. Because in the end, I realized something simple but true. The only thing scarier than ghosts is greed, and the only thing stronger than both is courage.